Welcome, everybody, to a brand new episode of IBC's Evil Safety Dudes. I am your host, Aaron Iacino, the Director of Risk Management for Innovative Business Consultants. And I am very excited today because I have a special guest that did the kind of grand opening of our training center here in town a long time ago, and now we got him on the show. So, Mr. Jim Cover, how are you doing?
I am doing awesome, Aaron. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. It's really warm, unseasonably warm in Sioux City right now, so I'm loving it. Where are you from today? Where are you at?
I am sitting here in balmy Lincoln, Nebraska, enjoying the 50-some degree weather myself.
Yeah. So,
January.
yeah, our weather should be pretty close to the same. I think you're only about 2.5 hours from me.
Yeah, you folks tend to get a little bit more snow than us, but usually the temperatures are about the same. So
Yeah.
I'll take this kind of weather in January every time.
Yeah, for sure. We haven't really even had snow to speak of this year too. So we're dodging a bullet there. Well, let's learn a little bit about you. Last time we talked, you were the program manager for Nebraska's OSHA Consultation Services. Are you still in that role?
Yes, yep. It's been I think I did that right when I started for you folks, and it's been almost not quite 4 years down the road, and I'm still here.
Well, that's good. That you must be doing something right or wrong. I'm not sure.
Yeah, despite Mother Nature's best intentions, I'm still here.
Well,
so,
that's awesome. So,
we've had quite a 4 years here.
Now, most employees and employers have heard about OSHA. Pretty much all employers have. It's hit and miss with them employees. I still have younger employees who never heard of OSHA, but for the people who have heard of OSHA, they seem to only know them as the enforcement wing, but you don't work for the enforcement wing. You work for a totally different division, right? The consultation division?
Absolutely.
All right.
Absolutely.
So I don't know if this is the nice way to say it, but you're like the nice side of OSHA.
I think that's a fair way of saying it, yeah.
Not that the other side's not nice. I've worked with several Nebraska compliance officers, and they were always really nice and stuff like that. So, but you're not the side that's actually finding citations and issuing penalties, right?
We do not issue citations or penalties. We are completely penalty free and no cost. So
nice.
In any way, shape, or form. So yes, there's no monetary problems with us if you interact with us at all.
So bribing you does no good because you don't charge anyway.
No, we might consider it. We're not supposed to take them, but it's not going to do you much good.
So the consultation side. So in my mind, that means that you kind of do what I do. You help businesses get in compliant with OSHA regulations.
Yep, we are. We're consultants that are. We're actually Nebraska Department of Labor employees. However, but OSHA does pay for the majority of our program through an agreement that was made back in the early '70s when OSHA was created. And I guess the bread and butter of it is we train at the same training locations that the federal OSHA consultants do, and we're invited out. We can't just show up without warning. People have to invite us out. But my consultants do as close as what OSHA does, but we're working for the employer. We're trying to find things that are wrong to fix them before they become problems. And if we do find a problem, we don't fine you. All we ask is you fix the problem within a certain time period that we both agree upon.
Well, that's nice. That seems definitely doable. I think the folks that do know about OSHA consultation services are still scared, though, to call up and ask because I think in the back of their mind, they're just assuming there's still a high probability that this will end in a citation, but that's just not the case, right?
Absolutely not. Yeah, we are part of our grant, it stipulates in there that everything we do is confidential from OSHA and from the public at large. So once we're on site and we've fulfilled our agreement with each other, the employer and us, anything we talk about, anything we do, anything we find is absolutely confidential from everybody. The one exception might be if there's a union shop.
Okay.
There's some issues there. And potentially, like we once we find site, like we find a problem, we require, the employer is supposed to post a list of the things we identify to let the employees know, everything is on the up and up and we're not trying to hide anything.
Okay.
But other than that, everything's confidential. In fact, we take our confidentiality so far. Once we're on site and we have what's called an open conference with the employer, which is when we first come on site until the last hazard that we have identified is corrected. If OSHA shows up for a program inspection, they can't call my office and ask if we have an open consultation. They have to call Kansas City and talk to their people in Kansas City, who then go across the hall to talk to our people in Kansas City, who then call me to say, Jim, do you have an open consultation with this company?
Wow. And
so that's how far we take it.
And from my understanding, too, if a business had called you in and you had came in and you're working with them, and then the enforcement side were to show up, there's a possibility where they could like leave maybe because they find out they're working with you?
Yes, if we have an open conference, which is from when we first set foot on site at your invitation to do a consultation until the last hazard is abated within our time frame that we've both agreed upon. And then there is a couple caveats to that, but if we still have an open conference and OSHA comes in on a normal inspection, once they find out we have an open conference together, they're supposed to turn around and leave. Now, there's two caveats to that. One is if there's been a complaint or if there's been some type of fatality or injury.
Right, that makes sense.
So other than those two things, pretty much once we're on site and we're working with you, they have to turn around and back out. Now, that's not to say, as soon as we're out the door, they might come in, but typically we've not had that experience here, at least the years that I've worked here, and that's been close to 22 years now.
Well, that's great. I have similar experiences, where when somebody knows I'm working with a client, they're less likely to want to go and inspect or audit because they know there's a consultant there taking care of things. They just feel better. Mm-hmm. Like, hey, these people are already working with someone that knows how to get them to that compliance level. So I could see that happening on your end as well. Have you been getting a lot of calls on for help on the ETS, on the Emergency Temporary Standard for the COVID vaccine?
I would like to say yes, but no, it's been a lot of radio silence.
Wow.
And I think, I understand why. Right now, there's a lot of I think, fear and not knowing what's coming down the road. And even though we're here to help everybody and we're not punitive and we don't issue citations, I'm afraid nobody wants to take that chance, I'm sure. Any government entity, is always looked at with a little bit of suspicion, and we're no different. But there's been a few people that have called in to ask some questions, and we've helped them as best we can. But we're kind of like everybody else. We're still waiting to see what the Supremes do ourselves, to see what goes on from here on out. But
right,
there's been some.
And I found some really useful tools on the federal OSHA's website on the COVID ETS. There was 2 policy draft templates, one for if you're going to make it mandatory and one if you're going to let people choose either to vaccinate or to test. And so I thought that was really nice that OSHA was providing those policy drafts because they're going to be compliant policies coming from OSHA. So
yes, yeah,
that's pretty cool that has happened. I have
to say that OSHA's website, compared to a lot of the other ones the government has out there, is typically pretty helpful.
Yeah, Yeah, the only thing I haven't enjoyed too much about it is the whole search function of it. I wish it worked more like Google.
Yeah, the search function is one of the things that doesn't quite work as well as we'd hope. So, but I mean, maybe someday.
Yeah, I'm on that website all the time. It's saved as my favorite. I'm always looking up regs there. I quit kind of buying the books, because it seems like you buy a book and then by the next year there's already at least one thing in there that's no longer accurate, And so I do like the website, and so that's pretty cool. Well,
yeah, we've kind of gone to that as well, because for the same reason. As soon as you buy the book, it's outdated within 6 months. But I have the website up every day.
Yeah.
So
I'm old enough though to where I actually prefer to read in a book than on a screen. So
we must be the same age. So that's my preference too. But I'm learning.
Yeah. I don't have a choice so much. I have to read on screens all the time, but I'd much rather kind of hold a book, and I like that. But all right, well, let's talk about some of the services that you guys provide to clients. What's some of the things that you guys could do for business?
Okay. Well, the typical thing when they request our service, they're thinking more like what OSHA does. Now, like when an OSHA compliance officer shows up, what are they going to look for? What are they going to do? What questions are they going to ask? Where are they going to go? And we offer, like I said, without the compliance side of it, we're completely at your service. We can look at as much or as little as you want as a company. So we can do a complete wall-to-wall inspection like OSHA would if they were to come through the door. Or if you have a specific area in mind that you would like us to look at, we can just look at that little specific area as well. But typically when we come in, the safety guys usually come in first, and they sit down with the employer or their representative, however you want to set it up, and they go through your written programs and take a look at your injury and loss data for the preceding year or two, just to see if there's any trends they can identify, maybe some problem areas they can look into, maybe something that you haven't caught yourself. And then with the employer along or the representative, they go and do a walk through the facility wherever you want them to go to look for problems. And they're going to identify the typical machine guarding, slip, trip, and falls, electrical issues, the typical physical safety issues. And as they're identifying problems, if there are any, they let the employer's representative know while they're walking through, hey, I think this is an issue. I think it's because of this standard. And then they'll go at the end of the day or at the end of the time after the walkthrough, they'll go through every one of the items that they've identified with the employer before they leave for the day. And then everybody kind of gets on the same page on how fast you think you can fix this. Is it going to be Is it something you can fix today? Is it something that you're going to need 2 weeks for? Is it something you're going to need a month for? We're pretty flexible on that. And then within about 10 days or so after the consultant leaves, you'll get a report that lists everything that you need to do, what their findings were, and some suggestions maybe how to fix some of those things.
Nice.
And then when everything's fixed, they send a sheet back to us saying how they fixed it and when they fixed it. And at that point, our conference is done. We also offer industrial hygiene services.
Oh, really?
That's what I did for the majority of my time here. And anybody that's had any noise sampling or air sampling done knows how expensive that is. And that is entirely free as well. There is no cost associated with the industrial hygiene services, from the use of the equipment to the lab testing.
That's a big deal. That's a really big deal because, it is very, very expensive.
Huge. And when I used to work for a program within the state 20 years ago, 18 anyway, and I used to have to charge for the lab fees and some of the equipment fees. And even 20 years ago, it wasn't hard to shoot $5,000.
Wow.
So at this, I've done 20 noise samples and 10 welding samples in one day that would have cost a company several $1,000s, and it's all free.
Man, that's a big deal. So let's talk about the air sampling. What kind of contaminants can you guys sample for?
Essentially anything that's in the OSHA 1000 list or the expanded standards. if there's a fel for it, we can do it.
Okay, so what are some of the main ones, the popular ones?
Typically, welding fumes is always a big thing. Maybe not as much as it was, several years ago. But, if you're doing any welding at all for any length of time, you probably should have some sampling done to at least set a baseline, especially if you're doing any stainless. If you're doing any stainless welding at all, you need to have monitoring immediately.
That's for hexavalent chromium, right?
Yes, hexavalent chrome is a terrible carcinogen, and it's also one of the top things that OSHA looks for.
Wow.
So as soon as they ask if you do any welding, their next question is going to be, do you do any stainless welding? Because they're looking for hexavalent chrome exposure. And if you say, yes, I do stainless steel welding, and you don't have an exposure assessment done, you probably just earned yourself a tidy little fine.
Man. And then I imagine you're probably doing some silica stuff too, huh?
Silica's a big thing lately as well. There's a big NEP, I'll have to remember what that acronym stands for now, National Emphasis Program. And that's another big ticket item with OSHA right now. It checks a lot of boxes for them, and it gets a gold star for them to take home to mom. So if you have silica in your workplace and you've never done monitoring, once again, you better think about getting an assessment done by somebody.
And it's not really that big of a deal, right? We're slapping a pump on somebody's waist and then a filter and a tube up by their shoulder, and they're just wearing it for the day, and then you're collecting it, sending it into a lab. It's not like, I think people are scared of it,
Oh, yeah. I mean, there's nothing to be afraid of. It might be a little bulky, but, a lot of the guys that I used to work with, when I'd hook them up with some of the stuff, they would be a little bit unhappy for the first 10, 15 minutes, but after that, they're like, well, I kind of forgot it was there. Unless they caught it on a hose or something on something. But, for the most part, they're like, it didn't bother them that much. By the end of the day, they were glad to do it.
Yeah, it's weird. Some employees are happy, like, oh, man, my employer's finally figuring out if we got safe air, and other employees are like, I don't want anything to do with this. I don't care if I'm breathing bad air,
In all the years that I did it, I only really ever had just a couple incidents where people were not, happy to do the sampling for me. But, it's like, don't you want to know what you're exposed to? I would think you would, but I guess maybe sometimes ignorance is bliss, and some people find.
Yeah. So,
but not a good employer.
So hex chrome, welding fumes, silica.
Any type of chemical for the most part. If you do spray finishing or dipping, if there's still anybody does dipping, pretty much if it's in the NIOSH pocket guide, we can probably sample for it.
That's pretty.
The only one thing that we don't do mold. We could help you kind of figure some mold issues out, but we don't sample for mold since OSHA doesn't have a permissible exposure limit for it. But pretty much any chemical, if there's a permissible exposure limit by OSHA, we can sample for it.
That's nice. Now, industrial hygiene, that's not just air monitoring too. So do you guys do any sound monitoring or anything like that?
We do a lot of sound monitoring. We have the best new audio dosimeters that you can get from L3M. Is not the company that owns it anymore, but it used to be Quest. And now instead of having the box with a microphone cable and a microphone, now it's just a little bitty, not even the size of a deck of cards that clips on your lapel. And you just wear that for the day, and we can tell all the noise levels you were exposed to from the start of shift to the end of shift.
That's pretty cool. I haven't seen one of those yet. I
so
still have the one that's...
The new ones, the employees love the new ones. So you don't even know they're there for the most part. And there's no cable to get tangled on. And they give really good, the results are astounding at times, and you can see a lot of things that you otherwise wouldn't see.
I have some hesitant people when I'm hooking them up. I wonder if you have too, where they think that it records everything you say, like all your words.
Yes, and when I was still hanging monitors, my monitor always started, these do not record your voice. They only record the noise levels you're exposed to. And if you doubt me, my retirement count would be a lot more than it is today.
Right.
I'd have a lot more people. But,
yeah, everybody.
It just records the noise levels.
Yeah, I would have to give that speech every time too. Now I just do it automatically now before they even ask me, because
Yep.
so many times employees, they're afraid that this is gonna record me talking trash about our boss. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Uh,
It's decibels. It's just decibels.
and I don't blame them. I'd be a little suspicious too.
Yeah, me
So
too.
I always make sure they know that, and I'm like, there's absolutely no way that this can record voices. It's strictly sound level. So all it does is give me a bar chart and a reading when we get done for the day.
Now another kind of monitoring that's I don't think as popular as sound and air is light. Have you ever done any light monitoring?
We do have some light monitors. We haven't had a cause to use them very much. And I think, the places now are so much better than what they were 25 years ago. I know when I first started doing this job back in '96, you would actually go into some places that were like working in a cave.
Wow. Like a
You
nightclub,
could barely
huh?
you could barely see your hand in front of your face.
Like a speakeasy.
And and you can't work safely like that. But in probably the last 15, almost 20 years, I haven't encountered those. So it's a rare day when we see that anymore. So we don't get a chance to deploy those very often, but we do have them just in case. But I have seen other people do it. It used to be a bigger deal than it is now, but I think everybody has so much better lighting now that it's just become less of an issue.
Yeah, and a lot of the people I see with warehouses and plants, they're all converting over to these LED lights anyway that last forever, and they're super bright, and So yeah, I haven't seen a lot of dark warehouses recently. The only time I think it's maybe could be an issue now is on a construction site like this time of year when people are working before the sun comes up and they're working after the sun goes down, and maybe the general contractor hasn't put a lot of site lighting up yet. I've seen that still going on, but not too much in industry recently.
And that's one aspect we don't get to see a lot, and we really wish we could change that. We don't get a lot of participation with construction folks. And it's not that we can't work with them, it's just that we just haven't had a history of working with them recently. So, anybody that's listening today that has a construction outfit that would like to have maybe their programs or their worksite assessment, please let me know. I'd be glad to work with you and let you know what we can do to help you out and comply with all the OSHA rules, Greg.
I wish I could say I was surprised that construction companies are not calling OSHA to help them, but I'm not.
Yeah, it's a tough sell right now, and especially back a few years ago when there was some disagreements with how some OSHA rules were getting carried out. That didn't help us out on that any, because everybody's all government's bad for most people in their eyes. I think we get a little guilt by association. It's been hard to get those, get the construction folks to come back and participate with us, but I'm hopeful.
I've noticed it a generation thing too. It seems business owners of a certain generation, they're really against government interference in their business. But then I see this next generation, like the kids who bought the business from their parents, they seem to be more about safety. Have you noticed anything like that? Not having much experience with construction folks lately, but overall, yes. And it's for us, it's a little bit regional too. But I've seen that the younger and the more maybe technology savvy folks that are coming on now, they know that it benefits them more to participate with us or folks like you in the private sector than to not do anything at all. Yeah,
and,
for sure.
If you're really trying to save money, safety is a great place to start.
Yeah, see, I think a lot of the older generation, they kind of were doing this when OSHA wasn't a thing, and so OSHA was like the new thing. But the younger generation, they kind of grew up with OSHA, so I think it's just par for the course for them.
Yeah. I can see that. Yeah, I'd have to probably say there's something to that.
What about contractors? Are you getting many contractors who are, reaching out for help?
Some. We've really tried to start building our relationships back with any contractors in our, here in Nebraska. And, we're kind of starting from scratch. So, we're trying to get the word out again, that we're here to help, with anything that you might need. We've got a couple gentlemen that have some experience in construction right now. So that's, I think, a good selling point. And, anything that we can do, we'd be happy to do for them.
Nice. Now, I want to switch gears and talk about low-hanging fruit because I just imagine, you consulting, there's some things you're seeing pretty much everywhere you go. Just the low-hanging fruit, just the easy violations that you're always pointing out. What do you think some of those consistent violations you see in a place?
Well, when I'm looking through the guys' I review all the reports that come through, all the consultations and the abatements and the hazards they find. It's signage is always one. If you have an exit, hopefully there's an exit sign over it, or a directional sign that says, where to find the exit somewhere. And I see a lot of those. Extension cords are the bane of everybody's existence.
Right.
Just making sure that the cords themselves are in good shape and somebody hasn't taken a pair of pliers to the ground number. Machine guarding is always an issue. Labeling panels, like making sure all your electrical panels, if they're supposed to be, if they can be closed, and they'll open on their own, and then all the switches in there have a label to what they operate or what they shut off, and that there aren't any openings. That for whatever reason we find a lot of electrical panels that just have missing blanks in them, and you could stick your finger right through the blank and electrocute yourself.
Yep.
Eyewash stations are always a favorite one that they don't maybe get the attention they need, or they're not located maybe where they need to be close to a hazard. Container labeling is always a big issue. And I don't know how many times I'll see 5 or 6 hazards for one visit of not having a container label to what's inside.
Yeah.
So, I think those are the biggest ones I think we see commonly, besides like fall protection, rails, top rails, that type of thing. But that's one of the biggest things. I think everything, labeling is we always find labels.
How about fire extinguishers? Do you see people doing the monthly checks very often?
Yeah, it's kind of hit or miss. I see that somewhat commonly. Here lately we've been working with people that we've worked with a lot in the past. And that's one of the things that's like the first thing to disappear, like on a follow-up inspection. The first time we go to some place, we'll always see fire extinguishers, probably, and an egress sign. And then after that, that's usually taken care of.
Nice.
But it happens quite a bit. I mean, it's a common one as well.
How well do you think folks are doing with filling out their OSHA 300 and 300As correctly?
That is that's one of those questions that can go either way according to, mostly we see people over-recording.
Okay, yeah, I've seen a lot of that, recording stuff that does not meet the recordable criteria.
And I understand that. I mean, if I was an employer, I would rather be wrong on doing that than wrong the other way and not recording something. And that's one of the things, too, I didn't mention that on our services, but, when we come through and do our opening conference, we do look through the 300 forms pretty closely to make sure that, are you over-recording, or is there something that was misreported or not recorded properly? And, the one thing, and I'm going to be sending a letter out to some of the folks here in Nebraska that meet the criteria, but the electronic reporting.
Right, that's coming up.
We run into a lot of folks that don't know that they're, one of those that need to electronically report every year, and they haven't done so, and it's been almost, 5 years now since they implemented it?
It's been out a while now, yeah. And those dates aren't in June anymore now. Now I think it's in March where it has to be uploaded.
Yeah, I think March 2nd is the due date. And I know we just had a staff meeting before Christmas, and that was one of the things that everybody was kind of, mentioning. Like, we probably need to mention to folks, do you need to be electronic reporting your 300 data to OSHA? Because we've run into a lot of people this fall that should have been doing that and haven't.
Right.
And OSHA's getting ready to do something about that. There's on the OSHA webpage, there is a bulletin, I guess, for lack of a better term, that says that all of the area offices now have access to the database. So when they get ready to do inspections, they can look up to see if a particular company has been filing or not, and to take appropriate action if they determine they haven't.
Wow. So if they were coming for a random or a pre-programmed high hazard inspection and they looked up and they were not reporting electronically when they were supposed to, they probably already got one citation in mind for this company before they even get there.
Very possible.
Yeah.
And from the verbiage on the bulletin, it essentially says that if they feel that there's a need, not only can they do, just a regular safety or health inspection, but they can start a record-keeping inspection as well.
Wow.
So something to think about.
Yeah, when I'm auditing logs, I rarely ever see one filled out correctly, and it's column F always throws everybody off. They don't get the three things in there. They don't get the diagnosis. They don't properly identify the part of the body, and they don't properly identify the object that caused the harm. It's like kind of it'll say something like hurt foot, hurt back, yep. Like which foot?
Hurt by what?
yeah. And which foot? You got 2 feet, hurt finger.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I see that.
And really, historically, and I didn't work with record keeping as much as like some of the safety guys that I've worked with for years. But it always seems like that's the one thing that has always kind of gone by the wayside a little bit. We're always concerned about, filling them out and making sure we report an injury. But I don't know as we've had a lot of training sometimes and knowledge on how to do it properly. And it's one of those things that I think there's not a lot of opportunities out there for training that people can go to anymore. And it's not very glitzy.
No.
So I think that's definitely one of the areas that people can improve on.
For sure.
Probably across the board.
There's, the national safety councils and, private sector trainers, we're offering record keeping, but yeah, it's not glitzy. It's not something anybody wants to see. When they see an email come across and it's like record keeping webinar, nobody's clicking on that and go, ooh, sign me up. I hope there's room.
Well, and I'm old enough to remember when OSHA used to send their liaison people out, across the state. They'd have, a training in, Norfolk, or Fremont, Columbus, Sydney, Scottsbluff, all across the state, where they'd actually have somebody from OSHA having a seminar about how to do the 300 form right. And you just don't see that anymore. So, and unless they engage a private consultant like yourself or us, or go to like the safety council, like in Brandeis or Lincoln or Kearney or Omaha, you're just not going to find a lot of help out there.
You guys got 3 safety councils? You got one in Kearney and Lincoln too?
Yeah, and I'm not going to be able to come up with the proper names for all of them, but yeah, there's one out in Kearney. It's getting to be a fairly good sized one. Lincoln's is still around, and of course Omaha.
Wow, I'm real familiar with Omaha. I actually go there quite a bit, even though I'm in Iowa, because Omaha is 90 miles and Des Moines 210 miles for me, but I didn't know there was that many. Now, you're in Lincoln, and so is consultation and enforcement both in Lincoln, Nebraska?
No, the federal office is up in Omaha.
In Omaha.
And I off the top of my head, can't remember their address, but they've been, I think, in the same location for a number of years now.
So you don't even office.
I'm sorry?
You don't even office with the enforcement people.
No, and frankly, other than some of the guys that started about the same time I did, I wouldn't know them if I saw them.
Wow. Well, that goes a long way to show how separate and how confidential it is, because in my mind, I'm thinking, the enforcement dudes walking down the hallway, peeking in your office and going, "Hey, Jim, how's it going?" But that's not the case.
No, I mean, and I know the area director and then a couple of the assistants and one of their industrial hygienists, one because they've been there about as long as I've been here. But, truthfully, the only time we ever see those guys or barely talk to them is when we have staff meetings down in Kansas City when they bring Consultation and the federal enforcement folks to, talk family business with OSHA to say what we can do better or, trends or issues. But otherwise, we hardly ever talk to them. And we never talk to them about our employers or what we found or anything.
Wow. You mentioned earlier NEP, National Emphasis Programs. Is HazCom still one of those? I can't remember.
I'm sure it is.
Because to me, it doesn't seem to.
For this year, but I'm sure it is.
To me, it doesn't seem to change. It always seems to be hazardous communication, forklifts, lockout, tagout. It's
I think the only recent addition has been silica.
Okay, and
recent, probably 5 years ago.
Let's talk about hazardous communication for a minute. How often, when it's the first time you're going into a business, how many times have you ever seen them have a chemical inventory list?
A complete one, or just the one that they call an inventory?
Well, I mean, even an attempt at one.
It just depends. Typically, they'll have an inventory. Now, whether it's complete or accurate is another topic. But typically, everybody has a rudimentary one. Once in a while, they don't have anything, but I don't know if that would be the exception to the rule. It'd be probably the exception to the rule. But, could it be better? Yes. A lot of the SDS sheets, and this is a thing that we'll find occasionally, when they went to the newer system for HazCom, and we went from MSDS sheets to SDS sheets, chemicals don't change that much, but the actual sheets changed a little. And we still go places and find MSDS sheets versus SDS sheets. So it kind of, for us, we're just, we say, maybe we need to update stuff. OSHA, that might trigger more questions than what you would want. So we are always telling folks, make sure you're keeping your inventory updated and your SDS sheets updated.
When enforcement side has, when I've worked with them, they're always wanting to see the employer's hazardous communication policy. I've seen them ask for that so many times, even when what they're there has nothing to do with it, with hazardous communication. Yep. So yeah, I'm always trying to get my clients to get a policy, get it updated, get it enacted, get a chemical inventory list, and get the most current safety data sheet for all their chemicals and just that, yeah. And then train everybody on them, and then get the PPE that the safety data sheet says they have to use them. And to me, getting someone compliant with the HazCom program, it's a lot of work.
Well, and that's that we were talking about low hanging fruit earlier. If you're going to be an OSHA co-show going out and do an investigation, and nobody wants to work harder than they absolutely have to. That's why they always start there. Is that's one of the most easy things they can find, is because nobody does their training exactly like they should. Probably don't have the PPE exactly like they should. And same thing with keeping the inventory and the SDSs together and access. So if you're trying to limit your liability, that's a great way a great place to start.
Yeah, definitely. I also notice maybe because of the National Emphasis Program, but it seems that forklifts are focused on a ton. What have you noticed about people's forklift compliance?
Hit and miss. Years ago, we saw, a lot of forklifts that, frankly, I'd be scared to drive. As we've moved into the new century and we've made progress, those type of situations are getting harder and harder to find. People are doing a pretty good job of, staying up on making sure that everything's serviced and up to date. The paperwork always seems to suffer, though.
Yeah.
And that's the only way you can prove to anyone that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. So I mean that's one of the things we're always counseling people on. You know, if you're doing your checks before you use the machine, make sure you're filling out the documentation, or else you might as well not have done it because nobody's believing you.
Yeah, if you didn't document it, you didn't do it, right?
Exactly.
That's the saying. Yeah, getting folks to have a forklift policy, something that I strive for, and then the training, making sure they're getting actual operator certification training to what the standard says, because I see that amiss all the time. If they're doing training at all, they're not doing an evaluation, hands-on, or they just bought a DVD online and it's not site specific or equipment specific, or the person doing it has no knowledge, training, or experience in training. And I just see a lot of errors in forklift training on sites.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I mean, nobody's ever perfect, but there's more perfect ones than others. So I guess it's always a journey, but it's one that you need to keep on top of and make sure you're doing the minimum. Keep everybody safe and keep any citations from creeping up on you if OSHA were to show up.
The other thing that I notice lacks very frequently is just any type of training at all. If it's OSHA annual, if it's new hire, if it's certification level, man, I just see training just is not done like across the board. Of course, there's companies that are all over it, but for me, in my experience, there's just not a lot of folks that are got the training aspect right as well.
And that's been kind of a hit or miss thing for us. Some folks are great about it, others aren't focusing on it. And that's one of the things, of all the things that you can do from the start to limit any problems you're going to have down the road, training is the hinge on that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm obviously biased, but I think training is very important. And, even just on an enforcement side, you can't enforce a rule that you didn't train them to do, that you didn't tell them existed. And you don't know if it's behavioral or if it's ignorance because you didn't train on it. So you don't know what they know. But when you train everybody, you know what they know. So you know if they're not following the rule because they just don't want to. Now you know. So plus it gives people that option. They know the right way to do it now. So the people who want to do it safe, they can do it, because not everybody knows just automatically how to do everything safe. What about kids in the workforce, high school kids? You seeing a lot of kids doing, in the workforce, running forklifts or, doing stuff. Do you get anybody asking you like, what are the labor laws and what can these kids do? I get those questions quite frequently, and I have to admit, I was like, man, I know a lot about OSHA regs, but that's kind of like different regs,
Yeah, and that's the Wage and Hour and Child Labor Act, and and we have some people that work with that in our office. So whenever we have questions, we go to them and ask. But it's been one of those deals. Though, a few years ago, that we had some manufacturers, a couple places close to Lincoln, that were really trying to maybe integrate some kids from high school into operations because they're desperate for employees.
Right.
Especially like machine operators and whatnot. And they can watch and they can assist only under very limited circumstances without violating the rules. So we around Lincoln and Omaha, we typically don't see a lot of high school kids, in industry. But I have a couple machine shops that I can think of one in particular. They do hire a lot of high school kids to, they start them off, sweeping the floors and doing some light maintenance, mowing lawns, and then they bring them along, assisting the machine operators, observing them. And if they show that there's some interest and some aptitude, they'll work with them and help them go to school and become a machine operator.
Well, that's nice. I see it a lot with contractors because it's like family owned a lot, and so I'll see the like the owner's son or the owner's nephew, working there. That's when I kind of see it quite a bit. All right, well, I want to switch gears. OSHA's top 10 violations. It's something that I look at every year when it comes out, and so that's just another lagging indicator of what I can make sure my clients are up on, because we're using this data to say, hey, look, this is what OSHA is definitely looking at. This is the top 10 things they are citing on. How much do you guys use those kind of lagging indicators as well on the consulting side?
Well, we use those all the time. That's our focus. I don't want to say focus, but we're always looking for those too and pointing them out. So it's unfortunately they haven't changed very much in the last decade. But we still find them, no matter how much everybody tries, we still find some. But it is something that we use.
Now, what's more difficult is like the crystal ball. Now, I remember about 4 years ago, you were talking about you felt like OSHA enforcement was going to focus more on warehouses, loading docks, things like that. And what do you think about maybe some things in the future they may start looking at more that they haven't?
Well, for the most part, the whole COVID issue's kind of sucked all the air out of the room the last couple of years, and for valid purpose, points. And I think the vaccination mandate and the healthcare mandate that they just took away for the ETS. That we were seeing a lot of nursing home activity and inspections of healthcare centers, nursing homes, whatnot, doctors' offices, hospitals. I don't know what's next. They haven't really broadcasted that to us or communicated that to us yet. I haven't really heard anything. I know construction is always one of their emphasis. I mean, not maybe this time of year, but as soon as the April rolls around through the summer, that's going to be one of their points of emphasis. So, construction is always going to be on the radar. General industry, machine manufacturing and metal fab, I'm going to say maybe been neglected a little bit the last few years. So I wouldn't be surprised to see them start to hit that a little more than they have in the past.
How much do you think, because the past several years, the whole active shooter, active killer, deal has been affecting a lot of businesses. How much do you think OSHA's looking at that at all?
It really depends on circumstances and maybe past experiences. I know they have done some inspections in the past on convenience stores and making sure they have some type of active shooter training or plan in effect. What are the employees supposed to do if confronted with something like that? Some of the healthcare providers too, like nursing homes and doctors' offices. Run-of-the-mill places, I think there's been some talk of it, and maybe some questions asked on what's your policy. It's always better to have a policy than not have a policy, of course. I don't know how far they looked into it per se, since there's not really a standard for it. So they'd have to probably go general duty clause on something that was horrendously not in place. But I know, at our level, just being state employees, I think I went through my third or fourth round of active shooter training. So, and that's only been in the last 5 or 6 years. So every other year I've gotten trained. So
wow, if
people aren't doing some level of active shooter training in their workplace, you really need to consider it, I think, and have a plan. I mean, everybody has a little slightly different way of handling things, from code words over the intercom to a certain alarm or situation. But, I think everybody needs to evaluate their workplace accordingly and come up with some type of plan in an event that you do have something like that happen.
Because, technically, workplace violence is within OSHA's jurisdiction and purview, yeah?
Yes, yeah. It's I don't think they really have a specific standard they can point to, so they have to refer to go to the general duty clause. But they'll still do it. I mean, I've seen them do it before for other places, especially.
All right. So you've seen them use the general duty clause before for certain things related to workplace violence?
Yeah, I can't remember if it was here, if I saw it in another region or not, but I know they've done it in the past. I know they can use it if they feel they need to. I know when our guys go out and do a consultation with the place, almost any place anymore, one of the things we ask them when we review their emergency action programs is if they do have a workplace violence policy or plans in place to deal with things. So, I mean, it's all because OSHA has dealt with it in the past, and they can continue to deal with it if they need to.
Yeah, I mean it's terrible that that's something that we have to have anymore, but it is the day and age that we're living in, so it's something we should think about and prepare for and have a plan for, and like you said, provide training on. And have you seen anybody doing drills on it?
You know, I have had a couple folks that have done drills. Otherwise, I mean, I know a lot of the schools around here do. I've got some folks that that work for the school system, so they're on top of that on drills more than I think mostly private sector people are. But I'm not going to say all private sector people aren't doing it. I just don't know. I haven't probably dealt with them on that. But if you haven't thought about doing one, it is probably something you should think about and probably implement at some point in time, because if you don't drill it, you don't know how it works.
Yeah, for sure. So switching gears again, a subject that I didn't really ask you thoroughly about was lockout, tagout. Now, in my experience, the policy up to date, the training, the equipment, and then the machine-specific lockout, tagout procedures, written, trained on, updated when there's changes. I see that significantly lacking. Now, I imagine down there in Lincoln, it's hit and miss again. There's probably some people that are on it. But what do you think? Is it something that the majority of businesses are up to speed on or need some help with?
It really depends. I think on how much lockout tagout do they deal with?
Right.
Folks have a lot going on with machinery and machines. They tend to be a little bit better about it than people that have like one or two things. But it's always one of those things that there's always room for improvement, and OSHA is a stickler for it. And I don't think a lot of times people have their written policies in place like they need to. And I don't know if everybody's doing their annual, certification like they need to make sure that whoever's trained to do lockout, that all the boxes are being checked and everybody is, doing the paperwork and the verification like they should. So, definitely that's one of those areas that I think everybody could use a little touch up on. If you have any lockout, tagout issues, I think a third set of eyes is a good thing to have come in and take a look around, be it us or private consultants or safety counsel, whoever, just to see, what you may be doing right or maybe not doing at all, or maybe need to do a little better job of.
Yeah, definitely. How many, it's probably impossible to throw an accurate statistic out of the air, but, just an estimate, how many companies do you see that actually have somebody in charge of safety for them?
As their only duty or as a collateral?
Well, we'll start with that one. As their only duty, full-time, safety-only person.
That has gotten to be a rare breed of them.
Yeah.
When I first started out, it wasn't uncommon to find people that was their only hat. And now, as time has progressed and things have changed accordingly, it's a rare day to see the guy or gal have just safety on their plate. It's usually safety, HR, or quality control, or shipping, or all of the above. So right now I would not want to being a safety person at a facility right now. is not a fun job probably most days, because you have so much going on and so many hats to wear, so many responsibilities. And, that's where, I would tell people, don't be afraid to, lean on somebody else to come help. Us or folks like you, Aaron, or, anybody else, any other resources they can find. I would say, don't be afraid to use them, because, nobody has enough time on their hands these days to be the safety person all the time. And, I think it just needs something that needs to be looked at more.
Yeah. And I totally agree with you. When it's rare to see a safety only person, most of the time, those exact combos you saw, safety HR, safety quality, those are the top two I see. And I 9 times out of 10, they were HR first or quality first. They threw safety at them later, and safety is always put on the back burner, in my experience, in those dual role folks. And
unfortunately, that's true a lot of the time.
Yeah, so it's really nice to have, what you guys are doing to assist them. Now, I don't know how to say this nice, but or how to ask this, so you answer it in a nice way, not trying to diss anybody at all, but how many of those jobs that have safety people in them are very well educated and trained safety people? You could plead the fifth if you want. It's okay.
Well, it's always hard to delineate that, because, when I was actively going out on the road all the time doing the industrial hygiene thing, a lot of these folks that had the safety responsibilities hadn't even been to the 30-hour OSHA course.
Wow.
They're going into. So, and that might have changed a little bit by now, but I don't think you could say across the board. If they did a random poll, I think we'd probably be scared of the numbers we get.
Yeah, it's one of the things that messes with me in my job, because my job is to assist clients to be compliant when they ask me. I tell them I'm here, but and I tell them all the things we could do, and I'll do kind of like what you're doing, like a free audit to tell them what they're lacking. But a lot of times the person in charge for safety, they don't know what they don't know. So they don't know they need to be doing a safety orientation or annual training or an operator certification. They don't know these things to ask for. They went to an OSHA 10 or they went to an OSHA 30, and they really believe they know there's everything there is to know about safety in OSHA, and so they don't reach out, and it's hard for me to say, hey, you are really, really, really lacking on compliance, and it's been a hindrance for me. I don't know if you've ever run into that where someone's like, we got this, but they don't.
Yeah. Like I say, it happens more than I'd like to see. And, a lot of times, when we just start walking them through things, I'm like, if there are these things that you're not familiar with, just off the top of your head, you really can't do a good job of doing the safety correctly. And a lot of times, my recommendation was always, if you've never been to the OSHA 30 hours somewhere and you're in charge of safety, that should be the first thing you try and get to.
Right.
Some way, shape, or form. Or even the 501 train the trainer course if you really want to get into the nitty gritty a little bit more. But if you've never been to an inclusive OSHA training class to try and cover at least the bare basics, what your responsibilities are. I just thinking back my experience starting out, I think it'd be almost impossible to do a good job of it.
It's tough. I remember in my first safety job, I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was supposed to do. I didn't have a background in it. It's one of those things where I was given it, and nobody in the company knew it. So nobody could train me and say, look, this is what a safety person does for a company. They do that. They didn't know anything. They just said, go do safety.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay.
That's one of the nice things about, the job I've had all these years is I think I've been in and out of over 700 facilities in Nebraska through the years. So I've gotten to see a wide variety of how people do things. And, there's no one way to do it. but there is a right way and a wrong way.
Yeah, yeah. And I do like that too, because even though I struggle with people who are in safety who don't know what they don't know yet, I do get the privilege to work with some awesome safety people too. It's usually in these bigger companies that can afford a full-time safety person, and they got someone there that's been doing safety longer than me, and I'm learning from them, and I do get to work with some pretty cool people sometimes in the private industry. How about you? Do you ever get to run into some private sector safety people that know their stuff pretty well?
Yeah, I've had the privilege over the years of meeting some folks that even probably today I would probably maybe defer to more than I might, just because of their expansive knowledge and their experience. But yeah, it's one of those things you only learn by doing too.
Yeah, for sure.
And so like the folks that where they wearing so many hats, don't be intimidated by it, but you do have to immerse yourself a little bit into the the rules and the regs, and getting that information from somebody who's already been down that road is a lot better than trying to break out the OSHA book and read it yourself. So, avail yourself of all those opportunities to gain the knowledge from folks that have already been there and done that.
Yeah, for sure. Great advice. Well, Mr. Jim Culver, it has been awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for coming on. And we have hit our hour mark, man. Time always flies. I know. Time always flies when I'm talking with colleagues, talking shop. It's always fun. I thank you for taking the time to let everybody know these services you're doing. And I just thank you for doing these services to people at no charge and all this help. It's really a great deal, and I wish more people would take advantage of it. So it's been a pleasure to have you on the show, and you're welcome back anytime. If there's anything new coming down the pipe, you think folks should know about it, let's do a podcast on it. So.
Will do. Thanks for the invitation. Great being here.
Yeah. So for Mr. Jim Culver, I am Aaron Icino. Together today, we are the Evil Safety Dudes. Oh, wait. We always try. You got to try to do that with me. You got to try to say Evil Safety Dudes. So I'll do a little pause first. So, all right. For Mr. Jim Culver, I'm Aaron Icino. Together today, we are the Evil Safety Dudes. All right. We botched that one. Take two. Ready? Together today, we are the Evil Safety Dudes. All right, that was going to be good enough for today. Thanks for playing along. Until next time, everybody out there, stay safe. Oh, Mr. Jim, while we still got you, I don't want to let you go without telling people how to get a hold of you. What's the best way to get a hold of you guys and get you in their place?
Well, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can go to our website, dol.nebraska.gov, and look for workplace safety or just safety. You'll be able to find me there. Or you can email me directly at jim.cover, that's spelled like cover, C-O-V as in Victor, E-R, at nebraska.gov. Or you can call me directly at 402-471-4717.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks for sharing that. All right, guys, now the real ending. Until next time, everybody, stay safe.